I've seen a lot of ridiculous things in my life. Fake inspectors, scammers, even some wannabe tough guys trying to shake me down. But nothing could have prepared me for the sheer lunacy of an HOA breaking into my property like some suburban SWAT team. Let's back up. I'm Alex Carter, federal agent. I won't say which agency. I like my privacy, and let's just say my job involves dealing with very bad people. The kind that don't file complaints with an HOA, but with a well-placed sniper round. After years in the field, I finally took some well-earned leave and bought a quiet place just outside the city. Rural, peaceful, and, best of all, completely outside any HOA jurisdiction. Or so I thought. It was a Sunday morning. I had just come back from a morning run, enjoying the smell of pine and coffee, when I heard the unmistakable crunch of tires on my gravel driveway. Not one or two cars, 5 SUVs, black, with tinted windows. My first thought, a cartel hit. Instincts kicked in. I slipped my sidearm into my waistband and moved toward the door, scanning for cover. But then I saw them, a bunch of overweight, polo shirt middle-aged guys, and one clipboard-wielding Karen marching like they owned the place. HOA enforcers. I relaxed. Barely. That is, until they pulled out bolt cutters and started cutting my front gate lock. Oh, hell no. I stepped outside, my voice sharp. You want to tell me what the hell you think you're doing? Clipboard Karen, her name tag read Margaret Harrington, HOA president, gave me the kind of look people give their dog after it poops on the rug. You are in violation of multiple HOA codes. We've received numerous complaints about your property's appearance, unauthorized structures, and non-compliance with community standards. We are executing a corrective action. I stared at her, then at the so-called inspection team, who were already moving toward my backyard. One guy had a crowbar. Another was hauling a chainsaw. I took a deep breath, carefully placing myself between them and my house. There's just one problem, Margaret. I'm not part of your HOA. She scoffed. This entire area is under HOA jurisdiction. No, it isn't. And I knew that for a fact because I had done my research before buying this place. My property was explicitly outside HOA boundaries. I even had the documents to prove it. But Margaret just smiled, waving at her minions. Proceed. That was the wrong answer. Margaret's smug little command was all it took for her goons to spring into action. Before I could blink, one of them jammed a crowbar under the wooden panel of my fence and ripped it clean off. Another started hacking at my hedges with hedge clippers like some deranged landscaper. And the one with the chainsaw? He was revving it, eyeing my tool shed like it was some kind of enemy combatant. These idiots were actually destroying my property. I felt my pulse slow, the way it always did before a fight. I could have pulled my gun, but I was still technically on leave, and the paperwork for shooting an idiot, no matter how justified, wasn't worth the hassle. So I did the next best thing. I went hands-on. Chainsaw guy was the first problem. Before he could take a single step toward my shed, I closed the distance, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. Hard. The chainsaw dropped, sputtering out as it hit the ground. He yelped like a kicked dog. "What the hell?" he shouted, clutching his wrist. "You're trespassing and vandalizing private property," I said, my voice calm but firm. "That makes you a criminal. That means I get to stop you, however I see fit." The guy paled. Apparently, this wasn't the response he was used to. Margaret, however, wasn't deterred. "You put your hands on one of my officers," she snapped. "Officers? Lady, this wasn't a police force. It was a glorified neighborhood watch on a power trip." I turned to the next idiot, crowbar guy, who had just yanked another section of my fence loose. "That's destruction of property," I told him. "Want to rethink your life choices." He hesitated, right before I kicked his legs out from under him. He hit the ground with a grunt, and the crowbar landed harmlessly in the dirt. The other HOA goons froze. 2 down. 3 to go. Margaret's face twisted in fury. "You are in direct violation of community guidelines, and I will have you removed by force if necessary." I exhaled slowly. "Lady, I don't know what fantasy world you live in, but let me make something very clear. This is not HOA property." She huffed, yanking a stack of papers from her clipboard and waving them like a magic wand. Your house is within the jurisdiction of the Pine Oak Homeowners Association. We have the legal authority to enforce code compliance. No, you don't. I had done my homework. My property sat half a mile outside the HOA boundary. Their rules didn't apply to me. They might as well have been trying to enforce playground rules in another country. But she wasn't listening. Instead, she turned to one of her remaining goons, a sweaty, balding guy with a walkie-talkie strapped to his belt like he was some kind of mall cop. Call security, she ordered. The guy fumbled with his radio. Yeah, you're not doing that, I said. I snatched the walkie right off his belt, dropped it on the ground, and stomped it into pieces. Silence. Margaret's eye twitched. You're going to regret this. No, you're going to regret this, I shot back. Because in about 30 seconds, I'm calling the real cops. And unlike you, they actually have authority. That got a reaction. The remaining goons shifted uncomfortably. Crowbar guy was still on the ground. Chainsaw guy was cradling his wrist, and walkie-talkie man looked like he was about 2 seconds from bolting. Margaret, however, wasn't done. She took a step closer, lowering her voice. You don't want to do this. We can make your life very difficult. Oh, I almost laughed. She had no idea who she was threatening. I was going to let you off easy, I told her. Trespassing and destruction of property. Maybe just a police report, a slap on the wrist. But now, I gave her my best predator's smile. Now, I'm going to bury you. Then I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Margaret must have finally realized she was in trouble, because the moment I pulled out my phone, she snapped, "Stop him." Her last two goons hesitated, big mistake. Because by the time they made up their minds, I was already speaking. Yeah, this is Special Agent Alex Carter. I need immediate assistance at my property, multiple suspects trespassing, committing vandalism, possibly impersonating law enforcement. I heard one of Margaret's guys mutter, "Special Agent," like he had just realized he stepped on a landmine. Margaret, however, doubled down on stupid. You're bluffing, she sneered. No way you're an agent. Instead of answering, I turned my phone so she could see the screen. I hadn't called 911. I had called a direct federal line. The operator on the other end responded immediately. Confirmed, Agent Carter. Officers en route. ETA 4 minutes. Margaret's face went pale. I pocketed my phone and crossed my arms. 4 minutes. That's how much time you have left before you need a lawyer. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whirled on her lackeys. What are you all standing around for? Clean this up. Chainsaw guy, still holding his wrist like a toddler with a boo-boo, tried kicking a broken fence board under a bush, like that would somehow erase all evidence of their crimes. Crowbar guy, still dazed from hitting the ground earlier, had the brilliant idea to try reattaching a fence panel he had just ripped off. It was like watching idiots in real-time panic mode. Hilarious. But Margaret? Oh, she still had some fight in her. She spun back toward me, her face twisting into a snarl. You think you're so clever? She spat. I have connections. I'll make sure you regret this. I'll file complaints. I'll report you to internal affairs. Sirens. She stopped mid-rant. And then, just to make things even better, I added, oh, by the way, I've got security cameras. Everything you did here? Recorded. Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. Then the cops pulled up. 2 squad cars rolled into my driveway, lights flashing. Out stepped 2 officers I recognized, Deputy Carter and Sergeant Reynolds. Good guys. I had helped them with a case a few months back, so I knew they weren't the type to play HOA politics. Deputy Carter took one look at my destroyed fence, the scattered tools, and Margaret's crew trying, and failing, to pretend they hadn't just gone full wrecking crew on my property. Jesus, Alex. What the hell happened? Before I could answer, Margaret charged forward. Officer, arrest this man. He assaulted my people and interfered with official HOA business. Deputy Carter blinked, then looked at me, then back at Margaret, then actually laughed. Lady, he said, HOAs don't have official business. Margaret turned an impressive shade of purple. This property is under our jurisdiction. He's non-compliant. We were enforcing community regulations. Sergeant Reynolds, a guy with the patience of a saint, rubbed his temples. Ma'am, HOAs don't have the legal right to enter private property without permission. Margaret waved her clipboard like it was a holy relic. We do have permission. It's all here. Our association agreement allows inspections and corrective actions for properties in violation of. I don't have an HOA, I interrupted. This property isn't under your jurisdiction. It never was. Deputy Carter glanced at me. You got paperwork to back that up? I nodded. I had every document proving my property was outside their boundaries, neatly filed inside my house. Margaret, on the other hand, very much did not. Reynolds sighed. All right, let's sort this out. If it turns out you're wrong, he told Margaret, you and your people are looking at criminal trespass and property damage charges. Margaret visibly gulped. The best part? It wasn't even over. Because the moment I brought out my documents and the officers confirmed that, shocker, I wasn't part of her stupid HOA, Carter turned to me and asked, do you want to press charges? I grinned. Margaret? She panicked. Wait, we can work this out. Yeah, not a chance. Margaret's panic was delicious. The moment Deputy Carter asked if I wanted to press charges, she switched tactics fast. The righteous anger? Gone. The smug superiority? Vanished. Instead, I got the classic Karen negotiation special, a mix of fake concern, gaslighting, and outright desperation. Let's be reasonable, she wheedled, plastering on a strained smile. I'm sure this was just a misunderstanding. There's no need to involve the police further. I turned to Carter. You got all this on body cam? He smirked. Oh yeah. Margaret's left eye twitched. Look, she tried again. There's no need for legal action. I'll have my team repair your fence. We'll even waive your HOA fines. I actually laughed. Waive my what now? She hesitated, realizing she had just admitted, on camera, to fraud. Carter leaned in, folding his arms. Did you just say you find someone who isn't in your HOA? Margaret blanched. Well, it was an oversight. A clerical mistake. Yeah, a mistake that conveniently involved her destroying my property. At this point, the goons who hadn't been arrested yet were backing away, trying to make themselves invisible. Crowbar Guy was still sitting in the dirt. Chainsaw Guy had turned an interesting shade of green, and Walkie-Talkie Man was visibly sweating through his polo. Then Sergeant Reynolds, who had been making a call, walked over. He looked far too pleased. So, he said, looking at Margaret, I just spoke with county records. You do not have jurisdiction over this property. In fact, this isn't the first time your HOA has tried to enforce rules on non-members. There are multiple complaints on file. Margaret opened her mouth, closed it, visibly deflated. That means, Reynolds continued, you've been extorting people, unlawfully issuing fines. And today, you and your team committed criminal trespass and property destruction. Margaret looked like she might faint. So, Carter, Reynolds turned back to me. You still want to press charges? I pretended to think for a second. Then I smiled. Oh, absolutely. Margaret snapped. You can't do this. I was just doing my job. Carter took out his handcuffs. Ma'am, you don't have a job anymore. And that was the moment Margaret, president of the Pine Oak HOA, got arrested in my driveway. Click, click. The sound of the cuffs snapping into place was music to my ears. Her goons? Scattered like cockroaches. 2 of them tried to leave, but Reynolds stopped them. Not so fast. You're coming too. 3 arrests. Multiple felony charges. HOA idiots exposed. And me? I just stood there, watching it all unfold, sipping my now cold coffee like it was the best drink I'd ever had. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Because Margaret might have been going to jail today, but I was about to make sure her entire HOA empire burned to the ground. Watching Margaret get stuffed into the back of a squad car should have been the highlight of my day. But I wasn't finished yet. Because this wasn't just about one crazy HOA president. It was about an entire corrupt organization that had been screwing over innocent homeowners for years. So, while Margaret was probably practicing her "I'll sue you" speech in the back seat, I made a couple of calls of my own. First stop? County records. Margaret had already admitted on camera that she'd find people who weren't in her HOA. I had a hunch she'd done a lot more than that. And I was right. Turns out, the Pine Oak HOA had a history of accidentally absorbing properties that weren't actually part of their jurisdiction. They'd been issuing fines, demanding fees, and even threatening foreclosure on homeowners who legally had nothing to do with them. Fraud, extortion, mail tampering, all very serious crimes. And lucky for me, I had friends who handled serious crimes. Second stop, the state attorney's office. See, most people think of HOAs as annoying little neighborhood clubs with too much power. But the second you start unlawfully taking money, threatening people, and falsifying documents, that's racketeering. I sent over every shred of evidence. Margaret's own words, the HOA's fake fines, even footage from my security cameras showing her goons destroying my fence. And when the state attorney's office saw it, they went nuclear. Within a week, Pine Oak HOA was hit with a full-scale investigation. Within 2 weeks, every fraudulent fine and unlawful fee they had ever issued was under review. Thousands of dollars were being refunded. By the end of the month, the Pine Oak HOA was completely dissolved. Their board members fined, investigated, some even banned from ever serving on an HOA again. And Margaret? Oh, she was toast. Turns out, her crimes didn't just stop with me. Investigators found misused HOA funds, fraudulent contracts, and a very suspicious bank account in the Cayman Islands. By the time they were done, she was facing serious prison time, all because she picked the wrong house to mess with. A few months later, I was enjoying my newly rebuilt fence, fully paid for by the lawsuit I filed against the HOA, when I got an email from an old neighbor. Subject: guess who's in the news? I opened it. Attached was a link to a headline that made my entire week. Disgraced HOA president sentenced to 5 years for fraud and racketeering. I grinned. Margaret had wanted to control everything. The neighborhood, the money, the people. She thought her clipboard and fake authority made her untouchable. She thought she could raid my house and walk away. Instead, she lost everything. And me? I went back to enjoying my quiet, peaceful, HOA-free life. Because if another power-hungry Karen ever tried something like this again, well, let's just say I'd be ready. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.